is this really interesting movement into something much more radical, which is around systems change, which is actually a recognition that actually the scale of issues and problems and challenges is so big, and the time we have to solve them is narrowing so quickly that actually there's no one group or one part of society that can actually make the change happen at the speed that we need. So actually what that's creating, this is real dynamism for unusual partnership.
I've been going to so many conferences and hearing the words low-hanging fruit now, as I'm sure everyone is. And it's like, yes, we've picked all that, or the leaders have. How do you then get now to the kind of the top of the tree? What's the next thing? And there seems to be this kind of big gap. And what we could see was that there are a lot of technical solutions out there. A lot of the things we know how to do, but actually the barriers to implementation are things like regulation, things like financing mechanisms, and actually the cultural behaviors around companies and paradigms of competition and so on, that actually the things getting in the way, not the individual technical solution. So we've brought our thinking around to talk about system thinking, and we do think it's the next big thing in sustainability because we think these incremental changes aren't actually going to create a sustainable economy. There is this paradigm of competitive advantage and how you work with your competitors, and we're actually now starting to see companies saying, hang on, there are certain things that we don't need to compete on. So we're doing a lot of work with Nike, and they were on the panel last week, and they're starting to talk about pre-competitive, and they've made they put about $7 million, I think they said, into this materials index, looking at the sustainability of actual individual materials. And what Nike is saying is, look, we don't actually compete with our competitors on the materials, on what cotton is there. Someone doesn't buy a Nike product because they think the value of its cotton is better. So we can share that. What Nike competes on is design, desirability, going after the athlete and their experience. It's not on what's in our materials. So isn't the route to a sustainable future going to be through making some of this stuff open source and accelerating and actually leveling the playing field?
The systems-wide thinking is really going to lead us in a different place altogether.
We come at collaborations with a history of more comfort. So it's kind of a part of our overall culture to have collaborations with a large range of people. And so in my work, for example, we have very formal collaborations with several organizations. So for example, we've since 1999 collaborated with the Marine Stewardship Council, which is the world's leading certification program for wild capture fisheries. And then we've been working with them for years, but what we found was that there weren't quite enough fisheries that were certified for us only to sell certified fish, and that all the customers that come to our stores really wanted information about everything, and they wanted to know if they were making a sustainable choice. So what we did several years ago is develop partnerships with two other NGOs, the Blue Ocean Institute and the Monterey Bay Aquarium, so that we could provide sustainability status information on all the wild-caught seafood that we sell, and that's consumer-facing. But these are very formal partnerships that are very key to how we make our sourcing decisions and the kinds of guidelines that we set.
If there's a global movement to redefine success in business, which is kind of how we think about what our mission is at B-Lab, there's not really a choice about collaboration. We live in an interdependent society. Everybody, no one sort of plays a role as an island. Everybody has multiple roles. Businesses worry about not just their consumers, but all of their stakeholders because they need to compete for talent. And they worry about the policy environment in which they are acting because they're no longer selling products in one community, but it's across the world. And so, there's a whole range of issues that mean collaboration is in many ways kind of a given. It has to happen.
I've seen studies that say 80+% of consumers are expecting that if you're a big company, you're doing the right thing. This is absolutely table stakes for operating in the business world today. And even though this isn't necessarily the biggest driver for consumers right now, it can really be a tiebreaker, especially if it's something that's really true to your brand and what your brand stands for.
The nature of the relationship with the supplier is similar to the way we approached NGOs or any external potential collaboration. Used to be a much more, well, let's just get a better price. And then we started to realize that our suppliers were really partners who had innovative ideas that could help transform the way we go to market and improve the overall performance of products, but also some of their sustainability attributes. So we've started to yield some of those benefits.
For me, the great stuff about why we do this work at Garden Sustainable Business, let's move it this way. Let's start building those connections. Let's start getting people passionate. Let's start informing people. Let's start creative. Let's be creative about what change looks like. Let's bring what's on the outer edge into the mainstream and make that normal. Because we have to transform, and we have to make the transformation normal. We have to make it every day.
Pioneering entrepreneurs that have become B corporations recognize that none of them can speak loudly enough through their own brand or through their own company. And so more and more they realize that if they want to drive big change at scale, they need to create kind of collective action. They need collective voice. And so the B Corp movement is all about helping those people act together as constituents. And policymakers tend to pay attention when a lot of entrepreneurs, really successful entrepreneurs, show up in the same room and say, we need a new corporate form, or we need incentives that drive companies to behave in a different way.
Continue to drive it forward. We've seen some very small fruits, energize some people in the organization who see the possibilities and the potential. There's more business functions looking to collaborate externally with either civil society or supply chain, retail partners, consumers. I just think it's our way going forward, and I don't want to leave out government because I think that they're also an important institution that we have to bring along that path.
We convene the scientists and the environmental groups and the producers and all these people together, and we look to figure out what the solutions are and do our best to come up with the very best solutions. Some people might disagree on a particular issue, but in that case we have to turn to what does the science say? What's been demonstrated here? And we try our best